Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Quick Draw. I'm your host, Mike, of the Owner of Young Guns, and with me, apparently fresh out of the Witness Protection Program, is my co-host, John, at Kemedi Hidioku. You really do look like you're... I feel like we should just give you a wig and a voice changer for the rest of the show.
That's right. I have inside information about my...
Here, let me if I lean it here, but yeah, it's terrible lighting. It's not the room I usually am in, so
It's not a problem. I have to give you shit. That's like a rule on the show. If I can give you shit, I have to.
Really?
So we're gonna, I don't know if this is gonna be a fun show or a depressing show.
I think
depressingly fun.
I think a little bit of both.
Or enjoyably depressing.
This is one of those nights where I really, really wish I was allowed to drink, but oh well. So who do we got tonight, John, and what are we going to talk about?
We have a good friend, Randy Wright, who is one of the hosts of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. There are two.
That is a mouthful.
So yes, but it's a good mouthful. You know that doesn't sound right. Anyway. Fuck it. So anyway, Randy is also a constitutional scholar, which is pretty awesome. Actually, lawyer, if I'm not mistaken, aren't you?
Yes, I am a licensed attorney in Texas.
Okay, so see, there you go. Oh, in Texas, no less. So see, that's even better. So
that's like a trifecta of awesome right there.
Do you take
con law, Texas lawyer, like. This is the perfect time to talk about guns, guys.
But wait,
yes.
Did they do the thing in Texas where you can carry like bladed weapons too? Like, do you do that?
Yes, actually, you can. As of last year, they made it to where they have removed the restrictions on bladed weapons, so you can now have switchblades. You can run around with a full katana if you want to.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
I get to be a samurai warrior. That is all I need to know. I'm moving to Texas.
good for some of my cosplay options, right? So,
right.
Right. So, I know that probably the first thing on my head, because literally minutes ago I was on Twitter, and the Parkland students. Dear God, I mean, come on. You got. What is it? I know there's Emma Gonzalez, David Hogg. Who are the other? Or Cameron? I
have not bothered to learn their names because they are irrelevant.
Okay.
They are children, and in 10 years they will be not even a footnote in history.
True.
Unless one of them tries to capitalize on their fame and run for office, which I don't see them doing.
David Hogg will probably capitalize on his fame and get a job at CNN, because I think they're already offering him which
I can't tell if that would I can't tell if that would raise their journalistic standards or lower them. It's kind of hard to go lower than rock bottom.
I think it keeps them about the same. So Randy, what about you? I mean, I know I was complaining to you a little while ago about how I can't find like a single gun control proponent with even basic comprehension of any
guns
concerning guns at all.
Guns
and all related topics.
Guns, history, law, like anything. Period.
Right. What it comes down to is a lot of what they try and say with gun control and the way that they want to try and handle these issues is it's almost always an emotional control. It's always this idea of, oh my God, it's the scary black gun. But an AR-15 is no different than a Ruger Mini 14. Except
John knows all about liberals being scared because of black.
Right.
Well, don't black rifles matter? I mean,
exactly.
Can't you say that? I mean, but
they do.
It's literally about aesthetics. If you look at, say, the 1994 assault weapons ban, all it was, oh, let's get rid of pistol grips, or let's get rid of the 30-round magazine. But
collapsible stocks.
Yeah. In actuality, none of that changes the rate of fire. None of that really changes anything. If you are well practiced with a firearm, you can take a standard 10-shot magazine and swap it out very easily. And so a lot of what this is, it's just based off of fear. The left loves to jump onto emotionalism. Why? Because that helps them push an agenda. But when you stop and think about it under the entire context, what they're actually looking to do is just power and control. It's not about safety. If it was about safety, wouldn't we be talking about how Janet Reno, and me being from Waco, that brings up, burning buildings, tanks, and other various unsavory images, but she passed the that whole Gun-Free Zone Act back in the 90s.
She was the one who did it.
Yes. And the amazing thing is the American Crime Research Institute put out a study that from the period between 1953 and 2017, 98.4% of mass shooting incidents took place in gun-free zones. Yet, does Rick Scott's gun control ban there in Florida address that? Partially in so much as he sits there and says, yes, we should arm teachers, but we need to raise the limit or the age limit that you can legally purchase a firearm from 18 to 21.
Which
now,
is pointless.
It is pointless, but there's something else to it. The other attribute of that is at age 18, you can go serve in the military. That means you have a fully automatic M16, not this, hocus pocus made up term of assault rifle, but an actual military grade weapon. But then we're going to say that when you come home, yes, you can own a business. Yes, you can vote. You can do all this, but you can't defend your family. Why? Because or drink, because you're not mature enough. You're mature enough to go get blown up by IEDs, but to hell with you, you can't defend your family. Great.
Right. And I think that's really where this breaks down. I was reading an article from National Review where they were talking about reasons why the left cannot win the gun debate. And again, one of the basic things, of course, is their utter lack of knowledge of simple terminology, simple understanding of how guns work. But then it's also the fact that they need to insult and attack people who own guns. Although not for very long, but I'm a relatively new gun owner. And the thing is just that they're, but yet I'm supposed to be told that because I don't want to give up that right, I'm a murderer. I'm an abettor of child murderer. That the NRA is, as the fact that the NRA is even brought up should tell you right there that there's something wrong, because the NRA has literally nothing to do with anything. And yet,
this was my response to those people. I always have to laugh when they're like, the NRA are lobbyists. I'm like, the NRA doesn't do shit. That's why I don't donate to them. Like, I refuse to give money to the NRA because they don't do anything. Like, it's a waste of my money.
What they're trying to do is make the NRA the new Freemason movement. It's almost like watching the anti-Masonic political movement of the 19th century. Oh, they have secret handshakes. They walk around with their handguns. They're going to kill people.
Right. Why? Handing out guns to random people to shoot schools. I'm just sitting there like, are you serious? But and here's the thing. The other thing we always talk about, and this is something I wanted to bring up while I was here, because I didn't write this out, but I will put it on the Facebook page eventually. I just didn't do it because I'm inconsistent and a lot of other crap's going on. But I said, that, look, we're always talking about we want solutions. I don't believe the gun control crowd wants solutions. They want banned guns. But I did come up with something that I wanted. What I wanted was this. I wanted to say, how can we secure schools in such a way that we can prevent these sorts of things from happening, but also that each school can take like an overall plan that I wanted to write out that would be something any school could take and like adjust it to their needs and then just take it and use it as a template. And so what I came up with was what I was going to call a multi-layered school defense plan, where you basically think of it in terms of like castle defense almost, is you just think of it in layers. So you've got
are you actually going to propose a moat?
Or, what? No.
Are you going to propose that schools have a moat, like an alligator field moat?
That would be that. Hey, that could be on the list.
That would be like that could work as a twofer, because on the one hand it would protect the school, on the other hand, if you had like an unruly student, you could be like, okay, kid, if you misbehave, we're gonna throw you in the moat.
Right. And so what I was thinking was this, because what I heard was people said, okay, armed teachers. All right. Now, again, when people hear armed teachers, they think, oh, hand them guns. No, we're saying if they already carry, allow them to carry into the school. So I thought, good, but not just.
I think Trump was actually proposing no, like, mandatory arming, though.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't know if I'd go that far.
I think that's a dumb idea.
See, with this plan, I don't think it'd be necessary. So what it is okay. So then some people were like, well, uniform guards. I was like, okay, but they have their pros and cons. And then people said, oh, well, why don't you hire like ex-law enforcement or retired military people to act as guards in the schools? And I thought, also a great idea. But how about a combination of all three in a layered fashion, where I say, okay, uniform guards have pros and cons in an active shooter situation. There's the pro is the appearance of security, is that they make a place appear secure. The downside is if a person wants to start shooting, they're the first people they aim at. So I said you can't have just them. The other guards you have with like your hired law enforcement would be plain clothes. So your first layer is the perimeter. That means the outside and the entryways. Your entryways should be able to be locked down, because and we just take what we know about previous shooter situations. They shouldn't have been able to get in. This guy at Parkland, they saw him coming a ways off. How did he get in the building? If you see, he was carrying a rifle. You don't conceal that. They saw him coming. But how do you stop him? Well, you can't lock the place down. It should be able to be. That may mean that you have doors that can be closed and locked that are at least resistant to gunfire. That you have metal detectors potentially. That you have, I would argue, like a card system. Again, this is not overkill. Lots of places do this, like where you have, okay, here's a card where you can get in, like I know schools, for instance, like my son's school, they have a list. Like they say, okay, who can pick up your kid? And then only those people can come get them. Well, why don't you hand out cards to the people on that list so that when they show up, or something that positively identifies them, so that when they get there, you know what they're there for, all this kind of thing.
I mean, a lot of these make sense, but it feels like it's a bit cumbersome when you consider a lot of schools don't do these things already, or they do these things, and we see that their effectiveness is kind of directly correlated to like how competent the administration is. So I feel like the school administration. So I don't see anything per se wrong with those ideas. I don't know if I see them fixing the problem though, because at the end of the day, you're still depending on adults to do their job, which
you always are.
Right, but we saw like the Parkland shooting. The government didn't do its job. So I don't know if there is a solution short of getting rid of these gun-free zones. I think that's a logical first step. These should not be gun-free zones. Gun-free zones don't work. They've never worked. And in fact, that's actually, if you think about it, that's a really good argument against people who say, if you get rid of guns, you'll reduce violent crime. Well, to Randy's point, no, you don't. 98% of mass shootings happen in gun-free zones. That's a huge skyrocket in crime. I mean,
right. And most people I know that are gun control are what they'll try to argue is, well, that's because it's not far enough. Like, remember Obama when he was saying, well, just because Illinois has, but the neighboring states have guns, so they just get shipped in. So what they're saying is the whole country has to get rid of them in order for this to work. And it's like, well, if that has to happen, first of all, you have a problem. Second of all, that's not going to happen. So, it's one of those things where you have to really ask yourself what's plausible and what can actually be done. And I do think, like I said, what I was talking about was just layer one, because that's your entryways, your perimeter, you have your hallways, which you just have people walking your hallways. That's where I think your plainclothes, kind of your hired like law enforcement / ex-military type people, veterans, can be used, is in hallways. And then from there, the last line of defense are your armed faculty, whatever teachers decide to carry. And not only that, look at Parkland. They had the one junior ROTC kid who died, who God bless him, but he used the Kevlar mats trying to protect kids. Why not make something like that could actually be used for precisely that situation? I don't see why you can't make something, I don't know exactly what, but something that you could use in a room for that purpose. The goal is to slow the shooter down, because the base logic is this: what ends an active shooter situation? Only one thing, and that's another person able to shoot back that's there.
Right.
Okay, as soon as possible.
Well, and think of it this way. One of the things that comes to mind is if you look back to 1963, you have Charles Whitman, a trained military man with a brain tumor. He kills his wife, goes up into the top of UT Tower, the University of Texas Tower, with this bolt-action Springfield rifle. He's able to kill 16 people. And who is it that stops him? It is these armed civilians, armed students, because they had marksmanship class on campus, who were immediately deputized, and they ran up with the deputies to go up into the tower, and they exchanged fire with him, finally taking him out.
Did they lay down cover fire for the police officers?
Oh, yes. In fact, they were on the Cambridge Tower condominium building, which is across the street, up on the roof. They had civilians there with their Seiko hunting rifles and their various other hunting rifles firing at Whitman right across the street. And by providing that suppressing fire, it was actually a civilian who came out and, fired the fatal shot. And see, that we used to have marksmanship training on school campuses. We used to have awareness of guns. I think a lot of what we need is situational awareness. I think these days with smartphones, all that wonderful technology, I mean, we wouldn't be able to do this without technology, but we aren't as aware of what's going on. And so we don't know how to make ourselves safe, and we propose blanket solutions, blaming inanimate objects, when, let's face it, this guy's a psychopath. He was cutting up birds when he was like 5 because he wanted to see what was inside him. Right. I mean, we have to deal with the psychopaths, and it's not like he wasn't known to authorities. I want to know why he was said to be fit to return to that school before, finally being kicked out by the mental health personnel.
That's actually an interesting point. So there was a thread that came out on Twitter. It started circulating. There was an individual, and so far it seems legitimate. I've done a very cursory kind of look into it. There's some public documents that they use to support their claims. It seems legitimate. I'm hoping somebody in the media takes it, kind of runs with it. I doubt anyone will. But what the thread talks about, and it's somebody who's doing this investigation into kind of the Broward County schools and basically South Florida school districts. And it started out with Trayvon Martin, actually. What they were doing was they were looking into, Trayvon Martin's history, his past, and what they discovered was that Trayvon Martin had a bit of a history, and they're wondering why it was never dealt with. Well, it turns out there was this initiative, especially in the Broward County schools, where to try to reduce the gap between arrests and suspensions between minority students and non-minority students, the solution, this brilliant solution they came up with, okay, we'll just arrest them less.
Right.
And so more and more students, and actually what happened is, and this is a perfect example of good intentions going awry and unintended consequences, the police officers were arresting these students less. So organized crime was like, hey, we can recruit students. They're minors. They won't get charged as adults. They might not even get arrested because they're minorities. And then they start doing things like waiting till the end of the year, because by the end of the year, the arrest quotas had already been met. And so it was more catch and release. So it started out as misdemeanors that were let go, and then it kind of escalated to felonies because misdemeanors wasn't enough to reduce the gap the way they wanted. And so the theory is that this Nicholas Cruz kid was one of those kids who's a repeat offender, repeat problem, and the policies in place were like, look, we got to let them go. We can't. We got to keep our numbers. We got to get our numbers so that minority students aren't getting arrested and suspended as much as non-minority students. And you have this system in place, and another kind of supposition was that once you have the system in place, corruption sets in, and where do you send the most corrupt and ineffective cops? Well, you send them to the schools because that's where they kind of can recruit and identify these problem kids. They won't try to do their job. Their job would be to uphold the law and arrest these kids. No, you got to find the cops who would be in on the scam. And unfortunately, corrupt cops are ineffective cops. And that's kind of where this whole, like, that the theory was, at least at the time, that was why the deputies were not going in. I don't think that part's true, because I think there's more information coming out as far as the dispatch and what was said. Right. But as far as why Nick Cruz had not been dealt with in the past, at least by state and local authorities, that adds up. As for the FBI, it's the FBI. They're fucking incompetent. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Well, that, when you had as many calls, I mean, he was an obvious red flag. And I find it amazing that when this is brought up, people actually do not want to hear it. Because if you talk about this with, like, the Parkland kids, or with anybody who backs them, nobody wants to hear about this. When you tell them the failure was law enforcement here, they did not do anything, they did not act, they had every signal in the world, and they didn't do it. And all they say is, yeah, but guns. Which is why nobody believes that any of these people who are pro-gun control, every one of them appears disingenuous. Because when you tell them the failures were elsewhere, when you present other solutions, they ignore all of it. All they want is to ban guns. And this is why, you know, this is not new, but it is new in the sense that it used to be that gun control proponents at least tried to pretend that they were trying to do something different. That pretense seems to be gone. I think they're letting themselves be very clear. They want your guns. It does not matter anything else. They don't want solutions. They don't care who's at fault. They don't care about anything. They just want your guns. That's it. They've even dispensed with that whole, remember how they used to say every time you said that, they'd say, oh, you're paranoid, you know, we don't want your guns, we just want sensible this, sensible that. And now, as far as I can tell, it looks like they've really jettisoned that argument. I think they're literally just saying, yeah, that's what we want your guns. That's what we want. Which
I'm okay with. I'm okay with the mask coming down, because then you could be like, see? I actually wrote an interesting thread on the group account, the @ornery_opinions, about this very thing. It's like, okay,
right,
let's suppose you pull this off. What then? What are you going to do? Like,
right.
Let's think about this logically. I'm just going to put on my thinking cap. You pass a repeal of the Second Amendment. Let's say you actually manage to either pass gun laws in the vast majority of states, because you're never going to get in all 50 states, or you pass a federal gun ban. What then? Texas, South Carolina, Florida, Mississippi, Missouri, Alabama, Tennessee, North Carolina, Utah, Idaho, they all become sanctuary states. Like,
right. And what are they going to say at that point? You can't do that. I seem to recall you doing this with something else. I recall that when it was immigration, all the sanctuaries were fine, but now all of a sudden.
No, Randy, you brought up a good point when you talked about the shooting in Texas, the Bell Tower massacre. It used to be the culture, and it used to be the case that we taught people marksmanship. We taught people how to shoot and maintain firearms in schools. This is actually an idea that I've wanted to see brought back, instead of just arming teachers in the sense of letting them carry guns. What about mandatory training in firearm uses? I find, because my opinion is, you know, the Second Amendment says that a well-regulated militia is necessary for the preservation of a free state. Well, anyone who studies history and studies common law knows that the militia is us. It's you, it's me, it's John. It's anyone, you know, old enough and strong enough to carry a gun. And well-regulated just means well-disciplined. It's the same root as regular army. So if you're well-regulated, you're as good at shooting things as a regular army. That's the idea behind it.
Well,
so
And
so why don't we make it mandatory? Like why don't we say, okay, if one instead of you registering for the draft at age 18, once you're, I don't know, high school age, 14, 15, 16, 17, right? You have to sign up with your local government, state government, and you have to get trained. You have to learn how to shoot. You have to learn how to take care of a gun, clean it, field strip it, maintain it safely. And that is part of the curriculum. That is part of being a citizen. Like, you don't have a say in the matter. And even if you're a conscientious objector, like, I'm never going to use guns. I'm never going to like use abhor violence, whatever. Fine. We're not asking you to shoot people. We're not asking you to go to war. We're just asking you to know how to handle a firearm safely, how to shoot it in case you change your mind and decide if you want to defend yourself from your family or home.
For the love of God, so that we have people who know the difference between automatic and semi-automatic.
Oh, I know. And, it's amazing. You bring up the fact that, to be as good of a shot as the military. But if you actually look at some of the Minutemen and the militia that we had in the American War of Independence with their Kentucky long rifles and their Pennsylvania long rifles, they were actually better shots than your regular forces, because again, the regular forces were carrying Brown Bess smooth bore muskets. There was no rifling in them, so you've got the little ball bouncing up and down as it goes out the barrel. That's why they stood in mass. It's because if you don't, you're not going to hit anything. You're going to aim, and it's going to go like 50 feet away from where you aimed. But the rifles, they actually had the grooves in the barrels. And one of the complaints the British had was these damn backwoodsmen are targeting our officers at 200 to 300 yards away and are killing them.
They're sniping them from the trees, right? I remember that. I learned history back when I used to teach it in school.
And that's the incredible thing is, everybody sits there, oh well, the founding fathers couldn't envision the types of firearms we had today. Never mind the fact that in 1719 the puckle gun was invented, a multi-shot bipodal gun that was big enough to sink ships. But no, our founding fathers couldn't imagine these things.
Well, and to that point too, you could own a warship. So let's suppose for a second, because we'll always try to pick apart the puckle gun argument. They'll always say, well, they didn't know about it, or it was still a flintlock, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. Let's give them that. Let's say you're right. The founding fathers didn't know about the puckle gun. They couldn't envision automatic firearms. You know what they could envision? Big fucking cannons wiping out entire cities. And you know what? They said, hey, you want your cannon? Have at it. Awesome. Second Amendment, baby. Rolling lathe.
Well, and Benjamin Franklin even had an idea about putting troops in hot air balloons, moving them behind enemy lines, landing them down there. You know what that sounds like to me? Airborne. Sounds like airborne troops.
Yeah, an Air Force.
Oh, but our founding fathers, they were just dumb rubes. No, they really weren't. And the whole thing is, the Kentucky long rifle was a better weapon than the militaries, the most powerful military in the world, that of Great Britain and good old Mad King George III. They were better than that.
Aren't you supposed to say that with a German accent?
No. Well, yeah.
Because King George was German. I was just a joke.
Yeah, Hans Gogh.
Really bad history joke. I'm sorry.
Well, maybe it's Hans Gogh.
I'm going to go now. John's in charge. Bye, guys.
That's German. It wasn't talking about the Judens.
Now, Randy, you're from Texas, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Were you there when the whole campus carry with that debacle was going on?
Oh, yes. Yes. That was just 2 years ago. And everybody was like, oh, if they make it to where you can carry on campus, people are going to die. The guns are going to jump out of the holsters and they're going to gun down the children.
My wife was actually afraid for a very long time. But my wife is from a country that doesn't allow guns much. And we first started I first got my handgun and my concealed carry. My wife was like terrified that I would carry it. She's like, oh, Like, I know this is irrational, but I just have this feeling like it's going to jump out of the drawer, out of the holster, chamber itself, because I used to carry with the chamber empty, and start and just go off, and somebody's going to get hurt. I'm like, honey, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works.
but yet you have people who act as though that's exactly how it works, and it's amazing because you're right, Randy. The entire argument is emotional. The whole argument is basically that no matter what anybody says, if more guns means that nobody asked who has the guns. That's very important. Just like someone I was listening to recently who was saying that the good guy with a gun is the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun, and it's like, the gun control people tell you, oh, nobody believes that. It's like, well, no, you believe that. How do I know? You called the cops. Are they not good guys with the guns? So obviously, when there's a bad guy with a gun, you need someone with a gun to deal with them. And so this idea that, oh my God, more guns just means people will shoot each other. What was that? Did you ever see that video somebody had of like oh no, it wasn't a video. It was an article somebody wrote where it was like, because the belief is that every time anybody has a random disagreement, like, on the road or something, that the first thing anyone's going to do is just start shooting. And it's just like, except nobody does that. That's the irony. I said, okay, point to a place where that happens. Well,
so funny story.
It's gonna happen.
I have to tell. Funny. You just reminded me of funny. So I'm driving home from work, and this guy, I don't know if he's stoned. I don't know what his issue is, but he is just driving like a psychopath. And I'm flashing my brights and trying to get around him because he's driving like a psychopath, and I want to get home safely. And he gets mad, and he starts like he goes into oncoming traffic so he can cut me off and slam on his brakes. He tries running me off the road and swerving and clipping he like tries to clip my car, and I'm braking and accelerating, and it's almost like a scene out of Fast and Furious,
right?
And so he pulls up to me as I'm like speeding away from him, and he's like mad, and it's dark, so I don't know what he was doing. It looked like he was doing this. So I just unholster my firearm, hold it up. He hits the brakes fast. Holy shit.
Well, my dad...
I did get a visit from the cops later that evening, like, to have a particular altercation. I was like, did some guy try to run me off the road? And I like flashed my firearm? Yes. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, just be careful in the future. Not all cops are as cool as we are. I'm like, because it's Boulder County. Because it's Boulder County. And I'm like, thanks, officers. You have a nice night.
Oh, well, my dad was on the road once, and this was back in the 80s, right around the time you could start carrying again. And so some jackass cuts him off and is trying to run him off the road, and he waves his firearm. And then the other driver waves his firearm, and then 3 drivers pass up and wave their firearms. And it's like, oh, we've got mutually assured destruction. And so that actually kind of goes to make a point here. It's as the old adage goes, an armed society is a polite society, because you never know who is going to have the ability to retaliate. And that's the whole thing with the gun-free zones. And I'm not trying to be a broken record with that, but the whole thing is, they go to where they have soft targets. They go to where it is the path of least resistance. Why? Because if they're psychopaths, if they're cowards, if they are criminally inclined, that's the path they're going to take, because they want to spread as much chaos as they can. I mean, think of Paris, France. Okay, we're talking about one of the most gun control oriented countries in all of Western Europe. And remember the terrorist train shooting. They had an AK-47, fully automatic one, not like the civvy ones we have here.
Right.
And it took 2 guys who were militarily trained to tackle them, and the death rate was unbelievably large. Why? Because nobody had the means to defend themselves and to defend others.
Right. And that's basically it. When I took my training course with the USCCA so I could get my concealed carry license, which I still have to do that. But I took the course, and one of the shut up. Like one of the things that they taught us was, they said, in most cases, they said if you it's not even just the weapon, like you said about situational awareness. They said that if someone's like trying to mug somebody, if they see like a 110-pound woman that's aware of her surroundings and looks like she's ready to handle stuff, and see a guy that's totally oblivious to his surroundings on a phone or something that's like 200 some odd, 200 pounds or whatever, they'll go after the guy because he's still an easier target than the one that sees you coming. And pair that with if you think she might be armed, well, then they're really not going to want her. The fact that she's smaller doesn't matter. She can retaliate. She knows you're coming. You can't get what you want out of that. But the guy, he may be bigger, but he's not armed. He doesn't know you're coming. Much better. So it just goes to show that between the situational awareness, the awareness that if the person might be able to retaliate, makes you think, I don't think I want that target. It doesn't matter who the target is. That's the amazing thing. And again, it's the other thing with all these people are like, oh, women's rights, we hate rape culture, blah, blah, blah. You know how you deal with that? Arm your women. That's how you do it. You give your women have guns. Guess what? Getting raped is a lot harder when you're, raping someone's harder when you're shot. So, that's
they'll just argue then that the rapist is more likely to use the gun against her than
maybe. But because we know someone who said that. But the fact remains, and it's also just as likely that he sees the gun and he doesn't want to take the chance.
He bolts. Right.
Yes, a gun is not a guarantee. We all understand that. But to say, well, because it's possible that someone could disarm you, we're just going to disarm you preemptively.
I think, and that segues nicely into kind of a point that I want to make is, people talk, the big talking point of the left is that if we just get rid of guns, then everything will be fine. We'll all get along, or at the very least, no more mass shootings, no more gun violence. Okay. The problem with that is there's no causation between gun ownership and gun violence.
Right.
There's zero causation. This was actually kind of an eye opener for me. If you've read the book Freakonomics or watch the documentary that's based on the book, Freakonomics does a bunch of different case studies of different things, and one of the things that they analyzed was the decline in crime in the United States during the 80s, and what they found when they accounted for various factors. Right? They looked at all this data. They had these economists just look at all this data. And when they accounted for different controls and different factors, what they found was that gun ownership, even though it was up and gun crime was down, gun ownership really had no impact. It wasn't because of gun ownership that gun violence went down. It was because of abortion. Legalizing abortion created an environment where the people most likely to grow up and become criminals were being aborted. Now that's not an argument for abortion. That's actually really horrific to think about that you could reduce crime by killing people. That's a horrible thing to propose. But it was eye-opening for me because it's okay, so wait. It wasn't because people were armed that gun violence went down. It was because we were killing innocent babies that crime went down. If you look at Australia, their ban, people point to them as a model for success. Well, the problem with Australia is their crime was already going down prior to the ban, and that decline did not accelerate.
And also, which crimes went down and which went up are telling, because I looked at some of the stats from 10 years after the ban.
As to say, Australia's, to my knowledge, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Australia's, to my mind, continued to go down. Now, UK is a case example of where you banned guns and then crime went up. So, especially rapes and murders. So, what does that tell us? Well, okay, it tells us that guns have nothing to do with it. It's culture. It's, it's access to other weapons. It's your prison system. There's all these other factors that play a role in violence in society. And I have a theory. I haven't taken the time to actually study it or plan out data. This is purely a hypothesis. But my hypothesis is you can look to certain, what I call sociopathic factors, right? Certain sociopathies, when prevalent or endorsed in society, correlate strongly and may even have a fundamental causation that relates to gun violence or criminal violence in society. So, for example, abortion, right? Abortion in America is performed at higher rates than any other developed nation, right? Not only is abortion performed at higher rates, but we fetishize it. The left treats abortion like a sacred cow. Like, you do not touch it. And they go to so far as to celebrate. Well, that's not healthy. Whatever your political takes on abortion are, whether you think a woman should have that choice, whether you think it should be for rape or not, or medical concerns or not, there are centrist views on abortion that I don't agree with, but I will acknowledge that they are centrist. They are not far left or far right. But the far right view, the far left views on abortion are sociopathic. They fetishize it and celebrate and glorify mass murder, essentially, eugenics. Right. That's a sociopathic factor. If that is in society, that may not be a cause, but there may be an underlying cause that links to both that and violent crime in America. That's why I think in the 60s and the 70s, where you saw other sociopathic factors, such as the whole free love movement, Marxism, and so on and so forth, that was like the golden age of serial killers. Right. That's when it was just like serial killers left and right. It was the 60s and 70s. But what else was going on in the 60s and 70s? Sociopathic politics.
Right.
And it's also the breakdown in discipline, if you think about it. Society loses discipline. And part of the whole counterculture movement of the 60s and 70s was about, we got to take down authority. Authority is bad. Authority got us into Vietnam. Authority did this. Authority did that. Okay. But when you stop looking at authority figures or looking to follow the rules, and then it becomes a participation trophy, I think this kumbaya type society that we have now is literally contributing to this. I think that people become more self-centered. They become more focused on instant gratification. And, I'm not going to go out and blame video games. I think that's ridiculous. I know a lot of people do try and ascribe that to them, but
as I say, both of us are guilty when it comes to video games. I'm guilty.
I mean, I think again, it's part of the breakdown of our institutions: the institution of marriage, the institution of the family, the way that we were taught to understand and respect the natural order of things. I mean, who even realizes that our Constitution and our entire system of government is based off of the natural law, meaning it is naturally there. It is what all free people aspire to be. We're not taught that. We're taught that our founding fathers were rubes, that it was an evil, racist, bigoted, homophobic, blah, blah, blah type.
This was all by and for white males, blah, blah, blah. Which, you terrible white males who just...
Oh, I know. We're just awful.
But, John, you need to smile more. We can't see you.
What? Oh,
what?
Well,
you brought up race, so I had to say something.
Well, speaking of race then, because one of the greatest predictors of violent crime is also the lack of fathers in families. And where is a better case study of that than in the Black community, where the family is broken down? Because I keep pointing out all the time that Daniel Patrick Moynihan, back when he did, I forget what year that was, but it was quite a while back. I want to say it was in the 60s, late 60s, where he put out the thing. And again, he was saying that, dear God, illegitimacy is reaching crisis levels in the Black community. And it was like 25%. Which tells you it was much lower than that before then. And so they were like, oh my God, it's jumped up. It's 50 or 25. Today, it's like, what, close to 80. The thing is that,
all this illustrates is that it's cultural. And you can think about that a priori, right?
Mm-hmm.
If everyone was a saint, if everyone was an angel, right? everyone can have an arsenal of nukes.
And it wouldn't matter.
And it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter. I would have a bunch of nukes sitting useless in my backyard, right? I'd probably decommission them and make them into my own little personal fission power plant because I wouldn't have any, because everyone's an angel. Everyone gets along. I don't need to worry about my self-defense because we're all angels. I have guns because I like to go shooting at the ranges. It's fun. It really is. Leftists need to give it a shot. Hopefully not get PTSD like that one guy.
Please.
I use the term guy loosely, but like if everyone's an angel, it doesn't matter how many guns they have. If everyone's a devil, it doesn't matter how many guns you get rid of. Yeah, it doesn't matter exactly. It doesn't matter how many guns you take away. They're still going to find ways to murder, lie, cheat, steal, rape. I mean, it's the culture that matters. And so one of the things that bothers me is we're talking about gun control. We're talking about gun reform. We're talking about regulating this and banning that and doing this. It's like, okay, some of those are effective stopgap measures. Some of them are not. Most of them are not. What are we doing in the meantime, like to fix the root of the problem? Right. And I think, and I will say this, one of the things I do love about the whole gun control movement when it comes out is it is so much source material for really good jokes. Like, right. I mean, come on. We talked about the open carry on campus, the campus carry. It's like, okay, who was the genius that came up with the idea of carrying dildos on campus? Like that, cops not clocks.
Jessica and once again at UT. So UT, we're either shooting them from towers or we're running around rubbing rubber dildos. I mean,
it's amazing to me because one has to ask the obvious question: what was it supposed to solve? What was the point of this?
I honestly think it was just a bunch of loose women that like wanted everyone to know, hey, I play with sex toys. I'm naughty.
But I want to find something not naughty to do with them.
I'm bored and I have nothing better to do with my time. So let me just like wave my dildos proudly. It's like, nobody cares. But, which actually, I was kind of surprised nobody got sued for sexual harassment for that.
But here's the thing, that the left has basically devolved at this point into, like, at best, the left is just empty platitudes. It's just do this thing because it feels good. That's the best they have to offer. The worst is, well, Antifa. But let's hurt people who, again, the irony being, we're going to attack you because you want to hold on to a right to defend yourself. You know, look at the claims look at the things said to like Dana Lash, you know, where it's, hey, we're gonna, you know, we hope your children never pick up a gun and harm you, or we hope, you know, we want to hurt you and stuff like that. And it's like, you know, that was the whole point of why I carry a gun in the first place, is to defend against people exactly like you. And it's like, you know, Randy, proving the point.
Randy, do you want to respond to the comment in the live chat that Aggies are better? And campus carry proves that.
Well, look, I didn't go to UT. I went to St. Edward's in Austin, a little small college. We always called UT that nameless school to the north because we were in South Austin. But you know, here's the family history for the Aggies. My great grandfather went to OU. My grandfather went to A&M, and my father went to UT. So I've seen all sides of this great rivalry.
That's a very political answer to that question. You should run for office, my friend.
I'll lie to you and steal your money. Vote for me. Yeah.
That's the most honest campaign there is out there right now. But I mean, it's getting ridiculous. It's bordering to the point you can't even tell if it's parody now. There was this thing on Twitter today that I responded to. So two of the kids from the Parkland shooting decided that a really brilliant scheme would be to promote wearing an armband for gun control.
Yes, I saw that.
They were wearing, okay, now they had David Hogg in one of the pictures. He's wearing a white button-down shirt, a tie, a black tie, and a black armband with a symbol on it. I'm like, do they not teach history anymore to kids? Like, nobody came up with this idea and said, and there was no adults. Maybe had learned history and said, maybe not do this one, guys. Just trust me. Why not? It's really cool. The armbands, they look awesome. They make my biceps look big.
Do they put pods on it? I mean, that would.
I responded. I said, you know what would really work really well is if you guys made, put a symbol on it that stood for something like, I don't know, saving students. You could put SS on the side for short.
Yeah.
You can imagine. You could then walk around and just whenever anybody pointed it out, you just say, "Hey, I know. Look at it. Look at it."
Hey, how you doing, buddy? I see you got an armband too. I'm so happy to see you.
Exactly. It's so perfect.
You know what's funny?
Ironically, they used the "never again" hashtag. I was just like, oh my god.
It's funny though. One of the groups that was pro-fascist in 1940s America were the Silver Shirts. That's right. They wore white button-down shirts, black ties, and armbands. Oh my God. Are we describing what this kid's wearing? Holy shit.
That's so great. I love
just like, how these kids not ever heard of Hitler Youth? I don't understand that. Like, it's only invoked in politics every time somebody uses kids to push a political agenda, except in this one particular instance where they actually dressed them up like Hitler Youth. Like, I don't understand it.
So when they do their march outs from the schools, are they going to be goose stepping? I'm just curious.
I hope so. I just want to. They should do it. Time it right when Kim Jong-un comes. For that meeting.
Oh yes.
Hey,
it'll make
the Mormon
Kim
Mafia out of this. They
home.
need the name tags.
but it'll make Kim Jong-un feel so at home to see that. Goose stepping fascist right outside. How could he not feel at home with that? But it's just.
There's actually a really good movie, and I've been kind of pushing people to watch it on Twitter. It's called The Wave. I guess it's based on a book. I didn't know that. It's a German film. It's really good. It's very, very good. It's one of the few foreign films I actually enjoy and would watch more than once. But it's about a German professor who tries this experiment with his class about how totalitarian governments are formed and how fascism rises. Because these kids, these students, they're German. They're like, no, Nazism is bad, but that'll never happen again here. We learned our lesson. We know what to watch out for. And he's like, you guys have no idea. So he does this experiment to prove to them that fascism can easily happen in a country like Germany again. And then, like, in 3 days, it's out of his control. And he's like, holy shit, what have I done? But because I'm looking at these kids, and I'm like, holy shit, this is just like that movie. Like, oh my God, this is kind of scary. Like, give it a week, and these kids will be goose stepping. Like, or doing something that's very Ziegelian.
Well, it's because they don't understand how those sorts of things happen in the first place, and this push for disarming the public is kind of one of those ways. That when you start saying that no one has the right to defend themselves because, and again, what's their general thing that they invoke is usually the public good. And remember that one saying, let me see if I remember how to say it in German. It was Eigennützigkeit, I think it was. The public will comes before the private good. But that's what they're doing. It's literally that, but they have no idea that that's how you get fascism. They think fascism is, it's racist. It's where people decide, I don't know what it is they think that it is actually, but other than racist, I think that's literally the only thing anyone knows anymore about what Hitler did is he's racist. And that's about all they know.
No, Randy, as a constitutional scholar, what would you say is the best argument? We've talked a little bit about some of the absurdities that the leftists throw out. I like to think that with the right argument, with the right approach, maybe a little sense of humor, you can reach people. What are some of like the best arguments that you can make though to these people? Because it's like talking to a brick wall half the time.
Right. I think one of the best arguments you can make is, look, if you don't want to own a firearm, that's fine. But you have to realize that the law was set up in the way that it was to ensure that we have the ability to defend ourselves and others. Because, I mean, two of your biggest criminal defenses are self-defense and defense of others. And, you know, they always like to say they're pro-choice. Why is it that they are not pro-choice? And if I want to own a firearm, why should I be precluded from that? And I think the biggest way that you juxtapose this is, okay, there is always a presumption of innocence, because when it comes to our rights, it's the duty, obligation, and responsibility of the government to prove beyond a shadow of the doubt, beyond a reasonable doubt, that you abused your rights, that you acted in a way that infringes the rights of others. My rights end where your rights begin. And the Ninth Amendment clearly says that rights and other parts of the Constitution can't be interpreted in such a way as to deprive or alienate other rights. So let's look at what actually causes the problems, such as gun-free zones, such as lack of awareness, such as lack of knowledge. I'm all for educating people about how firearms work, about how you can be safe around firearms. I mean, a lot of this just comes, as John was pointing out earlier, from just a lack of knowledge, just not knowing what's happening. I think a girth of information is what would be beneficial.
But I also think that we're dealing with a lot of people that don't want to know, and so
and that's the case.
Yeah, that's always going to be the case. You're always going to have people that are stubborn. You're always going to have people that don't want to listen. But I think Randy brings up a really good point. Is like, we know better, right, so we kind of have an obligation to educate people, to make sure
we do our
that and there's a way to do it that's not condescending or obnoxious or arrogant. I think, if we're just spitting out gun facts, or if we're spitting out things that we know, that because we care about this and we've learned the history, if we're just spouting those things off so we can kind of like slap people down and be like, ha ha ha, look at me, I know everything, we're not going to get very far. I mean, yeah, we'll get some high fives and some pats on the butt from our peers, but which, I mean, you guys are more than welcome to do. Like, I'm cool with that, but like can't be the only thing we're shooting for here. So, Randy, you have a show, the Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. Did I say that right?
Yes.
It's right in front of me, and I totally butchered it. Where can people watch that if they want to learn more about Constitution, history, and other topics?
Sure. It's on our YouTube page. We've got, just look up the Wright Flyer Radio Aviation Excellence, because it's kind of written that way, and it'll pop up. You can find us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, and on Twitter, you can find us at Radio Aviation EX, at Radio Aviation EX, and that'll have the departure board listed. That has my own personal Twitter account, my first officer Jeremy Grapington's Twitter account, as well as our blog spot, because I like to run out and write these long, rambling opinions and facts at people.
I don't think you're getting any judgments from me or John about being long-winded or rambling.
God, no. We're in no position to talk.
We do have your YouTube link in the bio. We'll make sure to update that with your Facebook and your Twitter. We just followed you, and
thank you.
Appreciate you coming on the show, sharing some of your expertise. We'd definitely love to have you back on.
I'd love to come back on
more con law stuff, because this is a lot of I'm a geek about this kind of stuff. Like, I love the history of this country. I love constitutional law. Like, there's some really fascinating stuff that unfortunately we didn't get to get into because of time. So we'll definitely have to have you back on so we can have a more serious discussion about this, more nuanced. Hey, some always have a serious. Some always have a serious. But thanks, Randy, for coming on. Make sure you guys follow him on Twitter, Facebook, if you still use Facebook, which is more like MySpace now. And make sure to see us next week. We might have someone from the New Federalist Party kind of tell us what's going on there. So we hope to see you guys next week. You have a great night.